All right. So welcome to Intro to Generative Artificial Intelligence, Demonstrations and Conversations. My name is Greg Bam. I'm one of the SCC librarians, and this workshop is the first topic of this quarter's workshops and the second session. We had one session yesterday. We will have a variety of sessions coming up, including in week 7, 2 sessions on GenAI and ethics in conversation and practice. In week 8, a spotlight on Claude, which is a GenAI product. In week 9, a spotlight on Gemini, which is a GenAI product. And finally, in week 10, a spotlight on Perplexity, which is also a GenAI product. So let's get started. Here's our agenda for today. We are going to cover GenAI basics, then talk about some common tools and take a look at a couple of them. We'll discuss the ideas around prompts and iterations. We'll talk about higher education and professional contexts for GenAI. We will cover issues and benefits of GenAI tools, and we'll close with me providing some recommendations on best practices for students when using GenAI. Again, if you have any questions or want to comment on anything today, please feel free to unmute or raise your hand or contribute to the chat, and we will address your comment. So let's start with a definition of artificial intelligence before we get to generative artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. This is a definition from IBM. And so in summary, we can think of this type of technology as simulating what humans are and what they do in a lot of different ways. When we look at artificial intelligence, we can look directly at the technology, but we can also look at the ideas behind the technology. And according to Google, AI is a broad field that encompasses many different disciplines, including computer science, data analytics and statistics, hardware and software engineering, linguistics, neuroscience, and even philosophy and psychology. And so artificial intelligence in Google's eyes is this field of study, this field of research, this field of inquiry, where we are exploring the implications of this type of technology and thinking in a lot of different contexts. And I say that especially today because whether you're here live or you're watching this recording, your background is going to be different from another person's background, but AI may still be relevant to you. Now, IBM's definition of generative artificial intelligence, which is why we're here today, refers to deep learning models that can generate high quality text, images, and other content based on the data they were trained on. And so we're focusing on that word generate or generative. The technology is providing a variety of different types of content. And we will see exactly what that means when we look at the examples in our demonstrations today. It's, I think, helpful to look at GenAI in the context of other types of AI. And so this graph here, or this visualization, shows the different types of AI that are commonly known and described. Welcome to the meeting, Jennifer. Just so you know, we are recording. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to raise your hand or enter them into the chat. So as I mentioned, GenAI is content generation. And GenAI is a more specific or focused version of AI, and it fits in this grand view of AI that's described here. So when we look at GenAI, we're thinking about image, video, text, audio, or content generation. The next broad iteration of AI is the traditional way of looking at AI. And this is what we can think of when we think of things like system level solutions for certain problems or certain types of functionality. So the examples given here include facial detection, image recognition, speech recognition, pattern recognition, and so on. Much broader, much more powerful than just asking a tool to create or generate a single image. And a lot of these types of functions are integrated into everyday life. So the cameras that are above the sidewalk, or the ability to talk into a phone. These types of technologies are using artificial intelligence technology to function. Once we start moving a beat through that and beyond to additional layers or broader layers of AI and more advanced uses of AI technology, we start to see the blurring of the lines between. I have to mute you, Jennifer. I'm sorry. We start to see a blurring of the lines between the technology itself and humanity, or what humans are capable of doing, and even going beyond what humans are capable of doing. And so in this case, we go first to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. And if you've ever seen a movie like WALL-E or 2001, and there's that robotic but very intelligent being that is in the center of those movies, we start to see that these iterations of AI technology are able to do much more specific and complex things. For example, an advanced virtual assistant, an assistant who can do different tasks on their own based on what humans do. Looking at diagnosis and treatment for medical issues. Looking at finding solutions to complex climate problems. Looking at providing education solutions that is personalized on an individual level after learning about a person's needs. Once we get into ASI, or artificial superintelligence, that's when we're moving into smarter than humans and this kind of super intelligent and beyond human the possibilities or the skills of humans in order to achieve certain tasks. If you've ever seen the movie Her or Ex Machina, and there's a variety of other sci-fi movies, we see the iterations of these types of beings. The ASI, artificial superintelligence, would be able to essentially provide solutions to problems that humans cannot provide solutions to. They're just such vast problems that we can't do it on our own. And similarly, these technologies can also emulate human emotion, human creativity, and behave exactly like humans. So that's really getting more into that sci-fi level of thinking. But now you've seen the spectrum of AI, let's step back to what we're talking about today, which is GenAI. So when we talk about GenAI, we're talking about these types of technologies that can generate content. And first of all, GenAI runs on a type of technology called a large language model, or an LLM. And these types of technologies are similar to, if you've ever heard of the terms machine learning, they are using machine learning technology and pattern recognition technology to essentially learn language. And use that learning of language to generate new content based on language. The LLMs have names. If you've ever heard of the product ChatGPT, the GPT at the end of ChatGPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and that is the LLM. These systems are trained on large sets of data often millions and millions and millions of documents and sources that can range from books to social media posts, articles, newspapers, video transcripts, and then lots of images as well. And they use that data set to learn the language of that data and be able to replicate that data and synthesize it. When we're actively using the tools on our end, most of these tools are requiring us to input something into the tool in order to get something back out. So it will generate something for us when we ask it to. The tools are being developed by for-profit companies, even big ones like Google and Facebook. Smaller organizations are exploring these technologies, and even individuals are developing or customizing these technologies for very specific purposes. The platforms that we have access to can be free, paid, or both. They can be available through web browsers or mobile apps. Most of them you do require an internet connection to use, but some are now available offline. And a lot of them are standalone tools, but they also are being found and embedded in other software. So Windows, Adobe programs, Office programs, even Google now has AI functionality. When you do a search, you'll see AI generated content at the top of each search. So there's a wide spectrum of where this technology is showing up. Here are a few examples. Have any of you heard of ChatGPT before? Got a thumbs up, great. What about Copilot? That's Microsoft's product. So that one is, that uses ChatGPT actually, but it is Microsoft's iteration of that. Gemini, anyone ever heard of that? Gemini used to be Bard, and that was created by Google. And then Claude, which is created by a company called Anthropic. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, we'll be doing a hands-on session on both Claude and Gemini later this quarter. So I mentioned you have to enter input to get output from GenAI. The output is very diverse. There's a lot of types of ways that GenAI can create things for you. Plain text is usually the most common. Most people know the plain text responses of Google and Copilot and so on and so forth. One thing that has been emerging and evolving over time is formatted text. So there's now tables, graphs, spreadsheets, computer code, etc. These tools have the ability to generate this formatted text. A lot of the tools can generate images, still images, animated images, etc. Video, music, and audio, so on and so forth. One thing I don't have on this list, but if you have a phone and you have ChatGPT on it, you can now use ChatGPT and a lot of other apps just in conversation verbally. So it can do just vocalization of text, which I think is very interesting as well. And then also I want to mention that often the outputs can be hybrid as well. It can include not only one type of output like text, but text and image or text and graph. So there's this kind of expansion of the outputs and more complexity to output. Let's talk about prompts and iterations. So when we're using these tools, prompts and iterations are really fundamental in knowing the power behind why these tools work so well. So first off, GenAI interfaces are similar to search engines, and we'll see this in a minute when I do the demonstration. But you enter something into typically a bar, a text bar, and then you get your output in response. But it's important to recognize that what you enter into the search bar is a prompt or phrase that's similar to a search box in a search engine or in a library system. But what's different is that the prompts are iterative. And the nature of these tools is often conversational, meaning you can enter something in, let's say, I want to learn about dogs, and then it will give you basic information on dogs. And then you can ask it, okay, now tell me about this specific function of dogs, and it will build on its conversation. It will expand upon what it has already given you previously. And you can refer back to previous moments in the conversation and so on. And you can do this for a very long time. The conversations are not meant to end at a certain point. Most of them are endless or unlimited. When we learn about using prompts well and the iterative nature of GenAI, some folks in the professional world describe the skill of using GenAI as prompt engineering. Now, we've seen that dim down a little bit, that buzzword, and some people are still using it. But essentially what it means is optimally using these generative tools, knowing how to put in the right prompt to get good results or appropriate results. Now we're seeing GenAI tools and technology in general being a skill set that's advertised on LinkedIn or in job applications for different types of requirements and responsibilities. But you may encounter the term prompt engineering still in some cases. So here are some examples of prompts that just to show you the range of what you could ask a tool like Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT. Why do so many people like poetry? Describe quantum mechanics to a 10-year-old. How do I make gluten-free pizza that tastes delicious? Can we talk about life, the universe, and everything? What can I do to get over test anxiety for my college course? Where should I look for information about the latest research in nursing? Please provide some feedback on my current resume. And put all the dates from this month into a spreadsheet and include empty fields for tasks and the required team member. So as you can see, there's a wide variety of things that you could enter into that prompt bar, and you would be able to get an answer from these tools for each of these. I want to say that the difference between doing this in a GenAI tool and a search engine is if you asked a search engine to talk about life, the universe, and everything, it might provide you links to web pages or discussion boards where there are discussions and conversations about life, the universe, and everything. But you're not going to be able to have an ongoing back and forth conversation with a search engine like Google the same way you would with any of these other tools that we're talking about. Google is not iterative in the same way. And in the same way, you cannot upload files into Google to get feedback. You cannot have Google create a document for you. Simply a completely different type of tool or technology than what we're talking about today. So I wanted to clarify on that. For those that are here today, do you have any examples that you've used in the past with these tools, or maybe something that we can add to the list when we do our demonstration? Feel free to unmute or enter into the chat if you have any ideas. If you don't, that's fine too. And we'll keep going, but if you do think of something you want to add, please add it or just unmute. And we're going to take a closer look at these tools today. Okay, in the chat, I have used it to clarify information. Okay, yeah, that's a fantastic example. So, for example, to discern between conflicts of interest and competition. Nice. Today, we're going to look at two different platforms. One is ChatGPT, and one is Microsoft Copilot. And before I break into the demonstration portion, I want to say that you can create free accounts on both of these. Note that any tool, any platform may ask for certain types of information to create an account, similar to other accounts you've created online before. So just keep that in mind. Your email, your phone number, your name, your birthday, these types of pieces of information may be asked for. And then, of course, you're going to need to create a password. I always recommend that you're cautious about what you're giving to these companies when you're creating an account, because we don't know, how good their security is. We also don't know about privacy in these platforms. These are private companies, and they might do anything they want with their data. That includes when you're using the tools themselves. So keep in mind that the data and the information you're giving to these tools may be used in a variety of ways down the road. So I encourage folks to never put in personal information such as, social security number, credit card, home address, anything like that, because who knows how that could come back around down the road, whether it's today or in 10 years or 20 years or whatever. Okay. So that being said, I'm going to break out of the PowerPoint here. And the first tool I'm going to show you today is ChatGPT. Now, this is the paid version of ChatGPT. I mentioned earlier that there's free version, paid version, and both. ChatGPT has both, a paid version and a free version. There's actually multiple types of paid versions, but we're not going to go into that today. And the interface for the free version and the paid version looks very similar. I will highlight a couple things only today, because we could spend a whole hour on how to use ChatGPT alone. But the main things are, on the left are all of your chat history, and it lists them, and you can go into them and reopen any chat and continue it as you need, or edit it or delete it. In the middle screen here, this is where you're starting a new conversation or chat. And there's the prompt bar in the middle here. And then most of these tools also offer, usually like around the new chat bar, ideas for doing certain tasks with examples for getting inspired or getting, some ideas just to get the juices flowing, And then I do want to point out that the top here, ChatGPT 4.0, this is where it lists all of the LLMs. And in this case, we have 4.0 with Canvas, which is fairly new, 0.1 Preview, and 0.1 Mini. We aren't going to talk about the different LLMs that ChatGPT has right now. Again, that will take too long. But note that in some cases, the tools you use will have options for the LLMs. And the LLMs, the large language models, they may be good at certain things. They may be fast at doing certain things. They may be slower at doing certain things, may have different types of functionality. And so if you really want to dive in and become good at using these tools, you can look up or even ask the tool itself for more information on the specific models. So stay with the default today, GPT 4.0. And we're going to demonstrate a specific prompt. So let's hear from folks in the room. What's a general topic or question I can ask ChatGPT today? Anything at all. Does not have to be related to college. Could be related to anything in your personal lives or your work lives. Welcome to the meeting, Kelsey. And if no one provides an example or idea, I will certainly provide one from my personal life. Okay, let's do one that I really like. So it is the fall season. I'm really into beer. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT, how do I make pumpkin beer? I love pumpkin beer. And here is the conversation. So the response, I want to note, as we see the magic of these tools, the big thing is that it's fast. You can see that it's still generating because it has a stop button. It'll finish in a moment, but it's fast. It's generating in this conversational window the first response to my question. How do I make pumpkin beer? And it's saying, making it at home can be fun and rewarding. It gives me an ingredients list. It tells me the equipment that I need. It provides instructions. Roast the pumpkin, boil the wort, add hops and spices, cool the wort, fermentation. Note that it does take 1 to 2 weeks. You can't just do this in one sitting. Second fermentation, which is optional, bottling, and then enjoy. So it has provided a basic recipe for creating pumpkin beer at my home or wherever in seconds. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is iterative, and so I can continue the conversation, unlike using a search engine where it's one and done. So in this case, there is a really fantastic jalapeno pumpkin beer I like. How would I make my own pumpkin beer really spicy? So it is now going to note all of the context from the previous conversation, and it's going to iterate off that. So in this case, I've asked it for more specificity around the spiciness. And it says additions to the base pumpkin beer recipe. So it's saying just add this to what I told you earlier today. And it's also, specifically talking about how to prepare these peppers, adding them during the brewing, other options to boost heat, and so on and so forth. And then, I can go on and on and on forever. I could ask it specific questions about how to make it sweeter, how to make it less alcoholic, etc. Or, specific questions around my context. The possibilities are endless, but this is an example here. Does anyone have any questions about this? As you're pondering, I will just note that, again, the way this is working, this is synthesizing information from the data set. So ChatGPT has millions of documents about making beer, plenty of documents about making pumpkin beer, spicy pumpkin beer. Where has it gotten this information? It's gotten it from the internet. It's gotten it from documents that the company has collected and uploaded into its database. And the LLM in real time has scanned what it knows, what it has in its databases, and pulled from many, many, many sources and synthesized using language, using the way language works, all of the rules of language, all of the meaning of language. It's synthesized and created what we have gotten here. And that is why this is so powerful. Now, you will also note that in this case, ChatGPT has not provided any sources because it's pulled from so many. But I might ask it, where can I go online to find more information about pumpkin beer? And as I ask that, it's going to use this searching the web functionality and provide sources that I can go to find more information. In some cases, these are real. In some cases, these may be web pages that are no longer exist. But with the recent updates, the tool has actually been pretty good in terms of providing live citations. However, I will say that the content that it uses in its normal generation is not going to be exactly aligned with the sources it's finding. It still is using all of those sources in its data set to synthesize and generate its answer, not only information on these websites. Now, later on this quarter, when we look at Perplexity, which is an AI tool that I really like, that tool specifically pulls information from the live web when it's generating its answers. So it's a different approach to GenAI that I like to show. But for now, this is ChatGPT. However, I do want to show one last piece of ChatGPT before we move on to the other tool, and that is image generation. So as I mentioned, a lot of these tools now have the ability to generate multiple types of content, including text, as we've seen here, formatted text, as we've seen here. Let's ask it for an image. You create a logo for a spicy pumpkin beer product that I create. Now, I'm going to see how it does, and it's now generating the image. Images usually take a little bit longer with these tools to generate than text does. There's more computer power required, or processing power required for that. And so here we go. Spicy pumpkin beer, pumpkin beer. One thing that GenAI is not great with is adding text to images. However, by a show of hands, how do you think it did with the spicy pumpkin logo? 2 thumbs up. I think it looks good. I do like the sliced jalapeno that is sliced on the side as if it had like branches of pepper coming off of it. Kind of strange. But I do like the pumpkin on fire. And it fits an aesthetic that I've seen at many breweries. So that's kind of cool. Also note that, a lot of the tool tips here allow you to continue exploring. So like it's asking for feedback. Is the conversation helpful so far? I would say yes. And then it's asking, it's giving you prompts to continue the conversation if you want. In this case, it's asking bottle label, beer pairings. So if you want to bring it into a meal, that sort of thing. In the chat, does it seem like it has a dry sense of humor? By default, different tools have different tones, and there, as we can see here, it certainly has a tone to it. It's got exclamation points. It is conversational. One thing I will note is that I think it tends to emulate or respond to the tone that the user brings into it to begin with. So if you are conversational and you say, I'm having a really terrible day and I'm on the verge of crying and I just need support. What it's going to do is take on a more supportive caregiver style tone to provide that kind of emotional balance. It's not going to be super sarcastic and poke fun at your sadness. So it does respond to the content of your language as well as the way you provide it. Now, if you ask it to take on specific tone, you can do that. So let's say, can you rewrite the original recipe in a sarcastic tone? I don't know why someone would want to do this, but you can. And I'm just going to read the intro. Oh, so you want to make pumpkin beer? How original. Well, let's dive into this overly ambitious homebrewing journey. Here's how you can impress your friends with your quote unquote seasonal craft skills. So now you can see that there's sarcasm embedded. And of course, it's bringing it into all of the ingredients as well. 1 pound of Munich malt. Fancy, right? No, not really. So anyway, you can do that with any tone you can imagine. The possibilities are endless. Again, it's pulling from data across the millions of sources it has, and it knows what sarcasm is. It knows what solemnity is. It knows what professionalism is based on other examples. Great. That's a great question. Let's move and look at Copilot. I'm going to share this one. And are folks able to see the Copilot screen now? Great. Copilot is similar to ChatGPT in terms of its layout here. I am in Edge this time because Firefox is not really giving me full functionality. But again, we have right in the middle of the screen our message box or our prompt bar here. And on the right is where the chats history are saved. And then again, it's providing some suggestions for places to start if we want to. Remember, this is Microsoft's product for GenAI, and it runs on ChatGPT technology, but it does have its own quirks, its own unique approaches that Microsoft has added in with its customization. So I don't see any other examples from the chat, so I'm going to do something a little bit different. What's a great display idea for a autumn book display in my library? So that's the question I've asked Copilot to answer. And as we can see, it provides some examples. So creating an autumn book display can be a fun and engaging way to attract readers. Here are a few ideas to get you started. And in this case, it's providing some examples here. Fall into a good book, harvest your favorite reads, pumpkin spice stories, rake in a good book, thankful for great books. And it's also providing links to Bing search results and also other websites. So that's kind of a nice thing about Copilot is it usually brings in links to other sources in addition to generating the content. In this case, we also can thumb up or down. We get our links here, and then it also provides suggestions for continuing the conversation. Let's say we want to iterate off this. Those aren't spooky enough. There's something we can do that brings in horror literature. And so, we can continue on our journey here into this conversation. And note that I didn't have to say I want a horror literature display. It's in the conversation, so it knows that we're still talking about the library and horror literature in the form of a display. And so it's provided some examples: Haunted Reads, Graveyard of Books, Witch's Library, Monster Mash, Spooky Storytime, Library of Shadows, and so on and so forth. So that is Copilot, briefly. Any questions on either Copilot or ChatGPT before we finish up the PowerPoint? Okay. I'm going to switch back to the other one. And let's continue. Got a few more slides, but these are particularly important for folks in college setting to be aware of. So I want to highlight that, as amazing as this technology may seem, it's not without issues and problems. And we cover a lot of this in depth in the ethics sessions that I run later in the quarter. One is that the tools can often, quote unquote, hallucinate, which is providing information and sources that may not be correct. So you could ask ChatGPT to provide links to websites, but they might go to broken pages. You can ask it for a bibliography, and it might provide books that are not actually real. And there's a lot of reasons why that happens, but it is a phenomenon to be aware of. Often, you're using these tools and you're not getting those citable sources by default. And in some cases, you're not getting citable sources at all, depending on the tool that you use. The rules and the standards and what the developers do in terms of oversight, and the same with government and how government responds to this technology is all over the place. So there aren't really standards in place for how this technology works, which means it's very chaotic and it's very rapidly evolving right now. Barriers to access. So I mentioned earlier that you need, for most of these tools, the internet. So what does that mean for folks that don't have the internet being able to use this technology? Same with, having a laptop or having a phone, and how some of these technologies are bringing in some of their functionality. Developer safeguards. So in some cases, the developers will create safeguards or put content off limits, and we can't use the technology for certain things. And in some cases, it's good, and in some cases, it might be good or might not be. For example, not being able to use the tool to look up certain information about certain conflicts, global conflicts, or certain celebrities or political figures, or talk about certain things like sex or violence. If those topics are off limits, why and who gets to say why? Bias in data sets and design. This one is super, super important, as these tools are pulling from human knowledge in recorded history, which is filled with bias. So too will the responses have bias. And that includes all sorts of forms of bias, including bigotry, including isms, racism, sexism, etc. And so how do we understand that and see that when we're looking at the generated content? Violations of intellectual property. A lot of these tools have pulled from different types of information without asking the original creators or authors or artists for permission, and that's problematic. And then I already talked about privacy considerations. The developers don't tell you necessarily what they're going to do with what you use these tools for, and how does that impact the world? Still, we can look at GenAI as potentially a helpful tool. So here are some of the benefits. A lot of people like these tools because of the voice and the tone that we talked about earlier, the familiar and friendly tone, which can be modified to suit our needs. We can have these tools support our own learning styles, or respond to various forms of disability that we might face. And that was mentioned earlier in the chat that clarification of information. So breaking down, summarizing, explaining our powerful capabilities of these tools. Precision in answers. Unlike a textbook, which only has the information laid out in one way, we can have these tools provide precise information in ways that is, again, iterative and conversational, in ways that can explore what we want to know and how we want to explore it. Technological access. So this is just another form of technology that is helping streamline our access to information. And the same way search engines, the same way various databases have helped us in the past, now we're seeing more access through GenAI. And ease of use. These tools are typically easy to use. Even though we do offer trainings, anybody can really jump in, create an account, and start exploring on their own without any formal training, just to experiment and play around. I want to talk about unethical use because we're in a higher ed setting here. And, while we can use these tools and they may be helpful, often there are problems with how we use them. And there are concerns with how we use them. So in higher ed, we really are concerned about entering assignments as prompts and having GenAI just do the work for us, because that's counter to us doing work and learning about doing the work, learning about and understanding concepts and comprehension and all that. So we would consider that use of GenAI to be unethical. Similarly, using the content generated is not credible. It's not authoritative on its own. It can lead us to credible and authoritative sources, but just like using Wikipedia as a source, we really don't recommend or look at as ethical citing directly those GenAI outputs. Using these tools at all and providing output information without including a student statement borders on unethical. We are interested in here at the college making sure that there's transparency around how these tools are used and making sure that we're talking about it and agreeing on how it should be used in any specific context. Copying output from GenAI tools without adding any citations. So in some cases, your professor or instructor may be okay with you using some of the output as long as you say that you're using that output. And always make sure you're adding citations when you do use it. A lot of this does border on conversations around plagiarism and academic dishonesty as well. So how can we use GenAI tools ethically at school? Does anyone want to contribute anything? Any ideas on what might be ethical uses of this technology? Just an example. I'll wait a few seconds in case folks want to type. To discern information. Yes, I love that. So to make connections between topics. I love that too. There's a lot of, I think, creativity that can be used with these tools. When we are in a roadblock, like a writer's block or some kind of creative thinking block, and we just need to bounce ideas off of something. The same way you might bounce an idea off a friend or a family member or a peer or a colleague, just to get some of those synapses firing. These tools have the ability to do that. And I think they do that really well. Even if we're not using all of those ideas and we're not citing that information, we can at least get those connections formed or started through these tools. A couple other ways, and the first bullet point speaks to that, assisting in creating new works. Editing and refining work. So there's countless ways that you can ask these tools to help you edit work that you've already created or provide feedback on it. Even if the feedback that it gives you is that it's really good what you did. And that has been the case professionally for me. I've created certain things and the feedback has actually been, well, there's no real room for improvement here, but the document you showed me is actually really good, and here is why. So it analyzes and supports what you created. But if you want to edit something to make it sound more professional, or if you want feedback on grammar, these tools can do that. Retrieving information. So we already talked about that with our examples. These tools can be a way to get connected to not only the sources, as we saw, but just the ideas behind the information. Now, it may require more work for us to go further and go upstream to the sources, but getting that initial information burst generated from the tools can be really helpful. Explaining concepts, can be really helpful. Rewriting concepts or any type of content that we find elsewhere in new ways can be useful. Translation is another good example of that. GenAI used as a tutor. So we're seeing more and more that these tools, whether in the form of ChatGPT that we saw and Copilot that we saw, or special software that's coming out where GenAI tutors are available, can be really useful. We're seeing GenAI in the workforce. We're seeing it integrated into products that we already use, as I mentioned. And so this means that GenAI will be showing up in our future places of work, whether we like it or not, whether it's heavily used or not. I've seen also examples of GenAI both here at the college and through peers and friends of mine in other workplace environments, talking about how it is helping them or supporting them in creating business documents and templates, emails, helping with creating meeting agendas, helping develop speeches and formal announcements, supporting translation or localization of content, and even with the development of creating simple computer code in the case of computer programming. Those are just a few examples. Any other examples from anyone here, how you've seen it show up in the workplace or professional environment for you? Or maybe you've recently you've recently used a tool to help complete a task. While you're pondering, I want to point out that this is a great example of a GenAI tool adding text that isn't correct. So you can see happy events, but also chalaments and M-tense. I'm not even sure what that's supposed to be, or M-up-D. Yeah, text in images in GenAI is not perfect by any means. Okay, the final slide here, student recommendations. So this is super important. If you forget everything else that I talked about today, when thinking about GenAI and what your context is as a student, you follow some of these recommendations and our lives in general will be better. When you enter a class, look for a syllabus and assignment language on how or how much you can use GenAI tools, if at all. There might be language around not being able to use it at all as well. Regardless of what you see, if you want to think about using GenAI in the class, communicate with your professor early on to discuss expectations or requirements. There's going to be different opinions, so being aware that some professors might be super excited about using it and the possibilities, and some may really loathe and hate this technology and think it's the bane of humanity at large. Being aware that those opinions do differ across the college is important. Include statements of use and citations when using these tools. So even if you asked it to, give you a link to this source, being aware that, you can tell your reader or your professor that you used the GenAI tool. Being transparent about using it, I think, will go a long way. And acknowledge over-reliance with the technology. So just like any other technology that we use, I think one of the main problems that we're facing is how this is impacting learning, because all of this is automated and reading levels and reading comprehension are very low in our culture right now. Having an over-reliance on the GenAI tool to do the work can be problematic for how our minds and our brains are developing and relating to that generative content. Still, we're going to see it present and it's continuing to evolve and emerge. So it's important to stay up to date on what's happening with this technology as a student and as a professional. So come to the workshops, look up information online, and stay up to date, stay informed. That's the end of this presentation. This recording will be shared with everyone that was registered with this event. And there's also a LibGuide that's on the SEC library page that you can find that has lots of great resources and other workshop recording links. At the end of the quarter, we will send a follow-up survey to everyone that joined so we can think about future topics and collect feedback in general. But yeah, if you like this one and if you want to explore more, please check out the other workshops later in the quarter. We would love to have you. Thanks everyone for being here. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Greg. Have a great day.